What's the most fucked up thing you've heard eavesdropping? The reason my Korean grandma was alive at the time is because she wasn't as pretty as her sister during Japanese occupation. Heard my uncle talking to my grandmother about my father when we were all on vacation. He doesn't even want the kids. He's not going to ask for custody. He just wants to leave. I was 5. Back in the 90s you could pick up cordless phone calls with an ordinary scanner from Radio Shack. That's how I found out the guy living one floor below me was dealing meth. Also routinely heard people's credit card numbers, sex chats, all that stuff. It was crazy. Ex thought I was sleeping. She went out on the back patio which was under my master bedroom window that was open. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but overheard her talking to her friend about how they were both fucking an old man for money and pills. In high school overheard a girl saying she's not worried about getting pregnant, she just tells her boyfriends to hold the cum in skeptical. My old landlord 70 meters was openly having an affair with his niece 50F in a small town in Ireland. Apparently the whole town had known for years, including her father, his brother. I still reel at how accepted it was. One time when I was in Las Vegas, I woke up and overheard my dad begging my mom to let him buy a prostitute. I could hear the pain and hurt in my mother's voice. I don't think I'll ever forget that. My uncle didn't actually succumb to cancer 20 years ago. He shot himself to speed it along. I was in line behind 2 older women at a restaurant maybe 5 to 6 years ago. One says, "Hey, did you hear about so-and-so's son?" The other says, "No, what happened?" She replies, "He ran off and joined ISIS." What was crazy was they seemed so casual about it. Like that wasn't a crazy fucking thing to hear about your friend's son. It wasn't a nipple, it was much larger. Heard at a Starbucks years ago and still think about what it actually was. I am from a very dangerous country. One night while looking at the stars in my yard, I heard a couple people plotting how to carry out a murder. They were meeting in an empty lot across from my place. I even heard them agree on the plan and then get on their motorcycles to go execute it. From an open window when I was 19 I overheard my mom telling my dad she raised a loser. That still hurts years later. In college I overheard this girl talking about how her parents recommended anal to her and that they had an open conversation about it all. Guy 1, "Do you like music?" Guy 2, "No, no." Guy 1, "Do you like bitches?" Guy 2, excited, "Bitches? Yeah, so a friend of mine got his aunt pregnant. It went like, buddy, are you sure? I mean, mom is going to be pissed if she finds out. No, 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 I'll go with you. For real, we can't see each other again? Wait, no, we can just go away. Together, you know. No, it's not wrong. I love you. Please don't." From what I can surmise is that his aunt was on her way to get an abortion or something and that she's going to leave. I work nights right next to a bar. The conversation that stuck with me the most was when someone's baby mama found them and started a one-sided shouting match outside the window. She said something along the lines of, "You've got $1 million in your bank account and still can't take care of your kids." Saw her running and screaming at him as he got in his car and drove off. I was on a notoriously hard hike up a mountain when I passed a group of girls and one of them said to the others, "I would rather get chlamydia again than do this again." Edit, it was the grouse grind in North Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. There was a young woman in a cafe telling her friend about her new young hot GPA, blue eyes, broad shoulders, so he asked me what's wrong. And I had to tell him I have hemorrhoids. We shared a wall with our neighbor's bathroom. Once morning we heard our kind neighbor crying to his girlfriend because she insisted she never slept with anyone else. He pleaded with her to tell the truth because he had gotten a call back from his doctor telling him he tested positive for genital herpes. He sounded so heartbroken and despaired, but she denied cheating repeatedly. He moved out and we never saw him again shortly after that. Was at a bar, went to the bathroom, and passed a woman talking into a payphone. She said the greatest sentence I have ever heard. This was over 2 decades ago, and I still remember it, clear as day. Yeah, well, every dick I suck puts your daughter through college. I have seriously used that as an example of perfect characterization. You learn her whole life story in one sentence. It's brilliant. Overheard a doctor I worked for tell a patient to get a pack of Camels and chain smoke the entire thing. He was a pulmonologist, lung doctor, so I had to ask. The patient he was talking to had a cough for 6 months, no treatment was helping. She called the next day, said she coughed up a giant ball of phlegm after all that smoking and her cough was gone. Serial chest x-rays showed no active disease. The doctor said he learned this treatment method in Canada back in the 60s. Edit, typo. When I was 9 years old, I was sneaking downstairs to the kitchen for a midnight snack and I heard my parents arguing. Heard my father tell my mother that he hated me and wished I had never been born. Didn't get midnight snacks again after that. Years ago I walked by a dude on the street. Visibly frustrated, he was on his phone talking to either his boss or a friend. Who knows, and then it got all caught in the gears, just torn apart. Jesus Christ, blood and guts everywhere. Right in front of the kids. What a bad day too. No, I didn't clean it up. I was late for my dad's funeral. Edit, my god, this is a hell of a thing to come back to. What in the fruit have I started? No, I need you to go to the clinic with her to make sure she gets the abortion because I don't trust her not to spend the money on a phone instead. My Mill was talking to my wife while I was making food. My sister-in-law, 13 at the time, heard her mother say, yeah, I should have just aborted, SIL, and saved myself the trouble. I know my Mill goes through Reddit, so, Pam, if you read this, I hate you. We all hate you, and every moment I spend with you is a moment of my life wasted. One day when your other children have all run away, only one left out of 6, I'll send you to the worst nursing home I possibly can find. Change your fucking ways before this happens. On the bus, on a nice sunny day, 2 seats behind me I hear a guy talking to his phone saying, I shat in her mouth, I couldn't help it. Happened just a couple weeks ago. Was at a water park in a ride. This family comes up to the steps to get in and the kid steps in the water and yells, kid, oh this water is colder than a witch's. Smack mum smacks him upside the head before he could get the word tit out. I burst out laughing and that mom instantly turned bright red out of embarrassment. Not really fucked up but hilarious regardless, and I was the only person in the immediate area that heard it. On the street outside my apartment, I once heard a guy say, if you had sex with an animal, which animal would it be? I'd pick a giraffe. It's not fucked up, just more so funny. I was in a thrift store a few days ago, and there were these 2 older men in there, talking very loud. One picked something up and kinda yelped and the other guy goes, you must have looked in a mirror. Old people roasting each other is some of the funniest shit ever. I was on the bus and I heard a guy talking on the phone with a friend, telling him how his girl beats him. His tone was pretty casual, but it sounded like there was a domestic violence issue happening. The most hilarious thing I heard was 2 guys talking, and one guy was talking about not being able to wear second-hand pants because someone else's balls been in them, sweating and stankin'. Was on a business trip to LA and overheard some people laughing about how one of their co-workers dove off a building a few days prior. I was sitting in my friend's living room with the window open. We heard a few guys outside smoking, not paying attention when the convo gets louder. Bro 1, bro, do you remember that time we were nailing that chick? Bro 2, yeah man, balls were touchin', shit was gay, I got no regrets then. Bro 1 and bro 2 share a high five. My friends and I still quote this. We were camping a couple years ago and the sites and tents were pretty close together. By the morning we wake up to a girl yelling, babe, babe, you're pissing on me. You're pissing on me. We lay there laughing silently and hysterically as we then heard them pack up all their stuff and they were gone before the sun was fully up. Serving food to a German family in the UK whose mum and dad were sitting berating the locals for everything under the sun from appearance, attitude, intelligence etc. unbeknownst to them I've got a good grasp of their language. As I was clearing their table I told them in their mother tongue that I hoped they'd enjoyed their meal and wished them a nice evening. Never have I seen such a shade of beetroot red on someone's face. My friend got her wisdom teeth taken out but had a bad reaction to the anesthesia, so I was helping take care of her. Her BF, new relationship, dropped by to check on her with one of his friends. I heard them both murmuring in the kitchen wishing I wasn't there so they could have fun with her. I confronted them and screamed for them to leave. She lived in an apartment building, so I know people heard me. They tried to say it was a joke, but either it was effed up and scared me. I was a cashier in a gift shop at the time, and these two old women came in. They were reading inspirational quotes off a wall near my cash register. Oh, I love that. That reminds me of Harold. Oh, it does, doesn't it? Things just haven't been the same since he died in that awful lawnmower accident. To this day I wondered WTF that meant. And that's how you assassinate Bill Gates. Literally all I heard from the conversation. It was two high-speed bicyclists on a trail in Washington state near Seattle. They were having a very animated conversation, and that was all I heard as they whipped around the bend I was walking on. Two customers meet after a long time in my store. Hey, I didn't know you got out of jail. Yeah, 15 long years. What happened? Oh, shot a couple people. Good on the man for serving his time, but I'm still desperately curious who he shot and why. I was at a Mexican restaurant when I overheard a woman casually telling her husband she was sick of his shit and wanted a divorce. He seemed genuinely stunned and didn't eat a bite of his food. She didn't seem mad, wasn't yelling or even talking loudly. Just calmly eating and telling him what an ass he had become and she wasn't going to put up with it anymore. She was absolutely cold but completely calm. Totally shredded the guy without even breaking a sweat or raising her voice. I just got back home from spring break, college, and I left the gate open to our driveway because my mum told me that my sister and her wife were coming to pick something up, and I was sitting in the office room immediately to the left of the front door as you enter, and my sister barged in angry that I had left the gate open and said he is such a fucking loser, can't even close a gate, he is just going to stay in this tiny ass town and do nothing with his life. He is just going to be some fat ass middle school coach like the rest of them. I grew up in a small Texas town that had a huge heroin and poverty problem. She said some other things between her and her wife. I just sat silently and didn't move at all. After like a minute or two they left back through that same front door and didn't notice me on their way out. I never told anybody in my family. I just promised to never forget what she said. Woman admitting to her friend she lied about aborting her child so that her husband would leave her. Not sure this qualifies, but I speak French, and when I was about 18 I was walking on the sidewalk near an outdoor pool. A bunch of teens about my age were walking on the sidewalk towards me, all in bikinis. Not wanting to be rude I passed them without checking them out or anything. Then as I passed and kept walking, I heard one say in French he didn't even look at me. Then the others consoled her and said she's cute/hot/how dare he. I feel like that experience makes even less sense now than it did then based on what society deems appropriate, but it's always in the back of my mind. Customer at work was talking on his phone, so I only heard one side of the conversation. Crabs. No, you gave me crabs. Well, who else would I have got them from? Needless to say, I disinfected the hell out of that spot after he left. It's not really fucked up but a bit sad and very comical, but I could overhear a young Indian couple arguing and the woman was just blasting the guy and listing out all his flaws and all the shit the guy did wrong in the relationship, and the guy kept trying to calmly get a word in and said okay but. So many times it started getting funnier the longer it went on. Eventually the guys finally did manage to say something and he said okay, but I don't think you're understanding the situation here. You cheated on me, so I am actually breaking up this relationship, in fact. So thanks for that, and I'm sorry you thought I was inadequate, but luckily, guy she cheated with is 10 times to the power and power of infinity worse than me, so at least I can feel good about it. Enjoy. The whole situation, the accent, the tone of this guy's voice, and that final burn had really stuck with me for a long time. I remember his response word for word, and I still use modified parts of it to make a shit situation seem less shit to this day. Heard some teenage guys behind a school planning on losing their virginity by hiring a hooker. The amount of times I've overheard stories of past, current, and future bouts of adultery is insurmountable. I've been a bartender at a bar that middle-aged women love for 6 years. I accidentally overheard my parents discussing whether to tell me and my 4 siblings that my dad had 3 children from a relationship he started at 16 over 40 years ago. My parents told us all together the next day. They only told us because the eldest of the 3 was stuck in cycle of drug addiction and needed help. I overheard my mom telling this to a friend while she was on the phone. Apparently when I was born, my dad said, "Are you sure there's not a penis on it?" When on the CTA Blue Line years ago, I remember overhearing this dude in a tinfoil hat talking to a well-dressed businessman about how he should try cocaine and that it would change his life. Looking at the dude in the tinfoil hat, I'd say probably not for the better. In a restaurant once, I heard a woman talking loudly on her phone. She was saying she was only marrying her fiancé so she'd have access to his job-provided insurance since she had serious medical issues. Standing in line at a gas station. Obvious regular customer, female, talking to the cashier in front of me. Me and Billy got a couple beers in us, and you know how we start to get crazy. So, then we start smoking crack. And, well, you know how I get. No I don't, and I don't want to. Just let me pay for my gas and Gatorade and get back on the highway. I don't need this. Walking through Kingston, southwest London about 10 years ago, and overheard someone on the phone say, "Well, whatever happens Steve, you're gonna get life." Still wonder occasionally what Steve did. When I was a little kid, around 11, I was upstairs in bed, and my dad was downstairs talking to my mom. My dad thought I was asleep, but I wasn't. I was listening to him talk, and he was talking about some guy who fingered someone's ass. When I was about 10 or 11 years old, I heard my teenage next-door neighbor masturbating and moaning, and I kept my ear pressed against the wall to listen harder in shock/curiosity. As it turns out, he was not masturbating but was being sexually abused by his stepfather. Actual conversation between 2 construction workers in Boston. "Hey, guy. Did you do the thing?" "No, guy, what thing?" "You know, the thing. Did you tell the guy about the thing?" "Oh, that thing. Yeah, the guy had the thing. Thanks, guy." I was about 15 waiting to be seen by my eye doctor. I think I got there early and was in the waiting room. There was no one else in there. However, I heard 2 doctors behind the wall talking about some patient and whether to offer a surgery. Essentially, they said the patient didn't need the surgery but they could make a decent sum of money, so they should encourage the patient to go through with it. I sat at a restaurant and listened to a woman shit on her husband, with her other guy. They were on a date while the husband was at home taking care of the kids. She was repulsive to say the least. A girl in junior high making fun of a dude in the same grade for not impregnating anyone yet. As I recall, she ended up having a baby and not finishing school. I was a conference call for work with groups around the country. One of the groups forgot to mute their line as the girls joked about which sexual positions their boyfriends liked the best and why. Most fucked up, I overheard some arsehole bragging about raping someone. He and his brothers were crossing the street in the other direction, and my friend and I stopped in disbelief. The thing is, he was so obvious about it, saying it at the exact moment we crossed their path, that we couldn't tell if it was a prank or a weird attempt to pick a fight. On the other end of the spectrum, I live on the 1st floor in NYC, and I once heard a really cheerful little girl say to her dad, "I love you, Dad." And he said, in the most sincere tone, "I love you too, and I will always take care of you." And then he added, "Don't touch those windows, people live in there." Not only a good dad, but the only person who has walked by with any awareness that people do indeed live on the 1st floor. Bonus 1st floor eavesdrop. An exasperated woman on the phone, and he wasn't going to work, he was having sex with women. My neighbor making sex noises that devolved into loud meowing and squealing for about 10 minutes. Never saw that car at her house again. I heard a woman crying and talking to someone on her cell phone, and she was saying that her daughter had been flown to a hospital because she had basically died. They had revived her and flown her to a children's hospital, and she didn't know if she would make it. She told one of her callers she didn't want to tell her other children yet, but that she was pretty sure her daughter wouldn't make it. She made a few more phone calls and then she stopped and just sat in the waiting room looking worried and sad. When I was a child, I overheard my mother talking to a friend about how she couldn't lose custody over my twin brother and I because she needed the child support check and welfare check so she could buy cigarettes and booze. She is not a good person, at all. I've got a couple, but the one that's standing out right now, was a relatively recent convo between two apparent strangers in line at a dollar store. Man, having a daughter really changed how I look at women. It's powerful. Like, I don't even beat my wife anymore. I overheard two girls talking about their friend. One of them said their friend and her fiancé are in an open relationship. They then said the husband doesn't know. On subway in Japan in the early 90s, two grade school girls talking about giving blowjobs in a karaoke bar for equivalent of $20, $30 as memory serves. Although a relatively poor grasp of Japanese, I was serviceable at the time. It was unmistakable and piercing. By grade school I am referencing 9 to 11 years old. Max. It stuck with me. The guy above my old apartment was a single dude. We barely spoke, but that's something I found out about him. He'd occasionally have a new girl over, and I could hear him boinking whatever girl he brought over. I'm not trying to talk smack about the guy with this, but him and whatever chick would go at it maybe 3 minutes tops. One night, he had a new girl over. I could hear mainly her, but after maybe 30 seconds sudden silence, followed by this chick bursting into laughter. I heard her leave maybe 5 minutes afterwards. I overheard an argument between my parents. My father was accusing my mother of cheating with her therapist because he called the home phone to ask me a question about a friend of his daughter. My mother then made it about her weight, claiming no one else would want her. After which she went to threatening divorce if he didn't figure his shit out. And all I could think was how the therapist called to talk to me. If you like pets, don't read this. It hurt my soul when I heard it and I'm still pretty scarred. I was working as a pipe player and overheard the boss talking to the equipment operator about a former employee of my crew. Apparently the guy's dog was terminally sick at the time, and he couldn't afford to out it down or something, so he figured he would do the right thing and put the poor thing out of its misery that evening by his own hands. The tool he used? A skill saw to the poor dog's head. He buried the dog in his backyard and went to sleep. In the wee hours of the morning he was woken up by some awful noise outside and went to look. It was his dog pawing at the sliding glass window, head wound and everything. The poor thing didn't know it'd done something wrong and felt bad, came crawling back for comfort. This absolute fool did a terrible job of putting the animal out of its misery, and an even worse job of burying it. I was on a bus and heard a guy say how he used to put his hamster in the freezer when he was running around the cage so that he would calm down. I was surprised to hear two people talk and laugh about such blatant animal abuse like that. I was on a bus journey where the passengers had to sit through a scary looking dude at the back making a series of loud phone calls which included threats to kill, arranging for people to meet him for this attack, and raging at people who he was seemingly calling at random to scream about his desire to stab him in the fucking neck, which was a recurring theme. I don't take the bus much. I was sent a text by mistake from my college lacrosse coach, no context at all. All the text said was, "Yeah, she's of no use to me anymore, her vagina is a big gaping hole now," and when I texted back I asked WTF does that mean, and his reply was, "Why did you send that to me?" He tried playing it off, but that text definitely wasn't meant for me, lol. Practice was awkward for a bit. When I was a teen I overheard two women chatting at the supermarket. One told the other that she and her husband recently installed a surveillance camera in their 14-year-old daughter's room and that the time soon has come where she'd have to explain herself. I was shook because it was such a trust break I never thought possible from parents. And it made me feel really uneasy for a long time afterwards. I wish I would have called them out. It's just so sick. At a 21st birthday a friend and I were having a smoke break, interpret that how you will. We heard two people leaving the party and talking in quite a distressed manner. One guy says to the other, "Mate, no matter how drunk you are, never try and kiss your mate's mum." Don't think I've ever laughed harder. Very recently, at my favorite little tea joint, a man comes in and starts talking to the lady who owns the place and makes the tea. He has a bandage around his torso I think, and the lady asked him what happened. He replies, "Got stabbed a few times by a patient. Never really thought this happened outside of house." Oh man. When I was deployed to Saudi Arabia I was working nights, and I had a night off. I was at the smoke pit around 3 AM and in the storage tent next to me I heard, "Dude, me suck that dick, oh shit. Nice. Dude too, fuck yeah. You like sucking his dick while I fuck you? God you're a fucking slut." Because I was young, horny, and bored, I stayed and listened to these two dudes banging some chick. They were not being quiet. I stuck around to see who the slut was. But then 3 dudes and no woman walked out of the tent. Took me a second to realize my misconception. Suddenly gay. Heard some dude on the phone talking about some woman he must have had a falling out with, saying how she's gonna live a sad life with a husband she doesn't love instead of having fun doing drugs and having sex with him, and how he hopes she gets raped. You see terrible people like this online and it's real shitty to be reminded they exist in real life. I was at a football game and a couple sat next to me. The guy was obviously a fan while his girlfriend/wife seemed very bored. About halfway through the game she leans over to him and says, "I'll let you put it in my ass if we leave right now." My dude stood right up, grabbed her hand and they were gone. Not me, but a friend. She was 13 and had a little brother about 7 or 8. Her mom had to go out of town to a funeral and left them in the care of her husband, my friend's stepdad. I'd like to start this story with they were a totally normal U.S. middle-class white suburban 90s family. No drugs, no drama, no Jerry Springer. Soccer on Saturdays, church on Sundays, neighborhood BBQs in the summer. Normal. My friend had been sick, so had gone to bed early. Lying in bed she heard her stepdad talking to someone on the phone, talking about how the bitch was gone for the weekend, so he finally had the kids to himself. Then he started talking about prices and times. She wasn't 100% sure what was going on, but when he laughed and said that he'd just drug them if they fought back, she knew it wasn't good. She sneaked out of her room and helped her little brother climb out of his bedroom window before leading both of them to a neighbor's house whom they went to church with. Thank God the neighbor believed them and called the cops. It turned out the stepdad was wanted in another state for all sorts of charges related to child abuse and pornography, primarily against his own children and nieces and nephews. Burn in hell, Rich. Actually kinda bummed this one is gonna get buried because I laugh about this every time I think about it. Adult son talking to his mom while walking around Target. His mom said something about not being a fan of Jesus, the biblical one. Her son said, "Why don't you like him? Did he write something mean in your yearbook?" And I have never laughed so hard at a random one-liner in my entire life. In Boston's North End about 25 years ago, I woke up in the middle of the night to a loud commotion just outside my bedroom window. I looked through the curtains at the street below to see my landlord, who owned an Italian bakery across the street, shouting chest to chest at another man, "Listen, you tell Menyinu if he sends another one of his goons after me, I'll send them back to him in a body bag." The mayor of Boston at the time was Tommy Mumbles Menyinu. And the best part was she's anorexic, so no SHT dick. The joy in his voice still haunts me. A very white trash woman telling the clerk at Walgreens about how her 12-year-old daughter was addicted to huffing paint. I got the weird impression she was enjoying telling the story. It felt like a brag. I wasn't exactly eavesdropping, because she knew I was there, but that almost makes it more fucked up, One night when I was about 11, I was doing my homework at the dinner table while my mother was on the phone with her best friend, and she just casually dropped the bomb that she was divorcing my dad. We had a cordless phone too, so it's not like she couldn't have left the room to have that conversation somewhere her fairly young, completely unsuspecting child wouldn't hear it. Not fucked up but funny. Was in a movie theater for the first Avengers movie. Guy 1, who's your favorite Avenger? Guy 2, probably Iron Man. Robert Downey Jr. is a bit of a dick, and I love dicks. Sitting at a beach bar in the Bahamas next to a couple, I don't care if your cocaine is stuck in your ass. You don't have to be a dick. Still wonder if he ever fixed that situation. Overheard a girl I was seeing a long time ago talking to her friend about planning to spike the weed we had just gotten to show me how good hard drugs were. I never saw that human again and I took the weed with me before it was spiked. This is more funny than fucked up, but still shocking. I was walking to a college class while in high school about a week after a stabbing happened at a local club near campus. I overheard this from two guys who were walking ahead of me. Did you hear about the guy who got stabbed? I heard he died in the hospital. Bro, that was me, I didn't die. What do you mean that was you? Yeah, Alyssa's brother stabbed me 3 times. He was drunk, though, so I'm not too mad about it. I was at the gym deadlifting doing a PR. I prefer to do PRS without music, and I heard this guy that was walking back and forth talking about how he's been hooking up with another girl and his wife found out and then his wife hooked up with the same girl. That my mother died from a scatter bomb when I was 5. I lived in Iraq as a kid. Was around 5 to 6 years old. Was sleeping with my parents on their bed. Woke up to them arguing. My mom was pretty pissed at my dad because of alcohol problems. My mom said that she was just waiting for me and my sister to grow up. After that she was gonna go die in a ditch somewhere cause she couldn't take it anymore. This went on for around 3 hours. Hearing that broke my heart that day. Worst part was I couldn't sleep and couldn't move, so had to listen to all that. A lot of my childhood memories are suppressed, but I know I've heard some messed up shit before. The one I can remember off the top of my head, my neighbor, a wicked successful realtor and the nicest lady in the neighborhood. She always gave us popsicles, let us play with her dog, hosted movie nights in her yard. Well, she got in with the wrong crowd. And as hard drugs do, it took her life from lavish to crack house real quick. Though she kept it pretty under wraps, we all noticed when her 2 years old son was no longer there, and she traded her Cadillac for a shitbox Honda. One day, mind you this is like a Tuesday on a school night, she comes to our door bloody, hair a mess, holding her dog Charlie by the collar. I hadn't seen her up close in a long time since the drugs, as she no longer gave us popsicles or hosted parties etc. I didn't even recognize her. She immediately asked for my dad, which was weird, but I ran and got him. He took her to our patio out back to calm her down. Yes, she was high as a kite, and we were watching Charlie. Me, being like 14 and nosy as hell, snuck to my room which overlooked the patio and quietly said my window open. She was telling my dad how they were partying and her BF took too much, passed out and then woke up not knowing where he was and who she was. So he snapped and beat the shit out of her. My dad walked her back home and proceeded to talk to the guy. My brother and I snuck down through the bushes as we were worried he would hurt our dad after hearing what she just described. Back in the day my dad partied, so he knew how to talk this guy down. We could hear him saying, "Hey man, let's all calm down. This is Tracy, you know her. She's your girl. You've been partying, it's all good. There's more inside." The guy had a tiki torch as a weapon, and clearly there was no getting through to him. He looked at my dad, dead-eyed, pupils black as night, and said, "I'm going to fucking eat you." We saw my dad back away with Tracy to run back to our house. We sprinted back through the street to beat him home. Turns out the guy was her dealer, the F and the one who got her hooked. A couple months later SWAT was at our door, asking permission to enter the backyard so they'd have a clear shot of her back door. I heard the SWAT guy say ready to execute once he had his shot. Thankfully the guy was apprehended without lethal force. He was using her house as a trap house. It's been 10 years since I've seen her. I had just secured a place for my family to live with an old college friend and their family. My partner and I helped a lot around the house trying to make it sanitary and did the dishes on the regular. It became obvious we were just picking up after them at this point and they were not helping one bit. My friend mentioned to their mill that they felt bad that we were constantly picking up after them, to which she replied, "Well, they are guests here, they should be pulling their weight, they're freeloaders if not." They agreed. Mind you, we were paying rent and allowing them to buy food off of our stamps since things were tight. We stopped cleaning up after them, and told them we needed the money for our own food. The house was trashed in less than a week. Edit, I can't grammar today. Eavesdropped on my ex and my mom talking just to be nosy, really had no reason and heard them talking about how good he fucked my mom, neutral face. Apparently gonorrhea, HIV, and West Nile are up like 400% in a county a few hours away from me. The funny stuff you hear eavesdropping on doctors lol. My brother and I played this game when we were teenagers where we would see people walking in the opposite direction to us and we would say something to try and get a WTF reaction from them. I managed to make my brother devolve into a fit of laughter with this one. We were going to the movies and saw a rather posh-looking older couple walking the opposite direction, suit, dress, pearls. This older couple was dressed to the nines. So when they got close I turned to my brother and loudly said, "So I didn't kill him but I was holding the dildo." The lady gasped and they hurried on their way as my brother lost the ability to contain his laughter. I had heard the line from a comedian not long before this but apparently my brother hadn't heard it, took him completely by surprise.